Hey, y'all. Today we're going to talk about legal writing mostly. You've now read chapter 12 and kind of want to go over it briefly and kind of wanted to add some of my pointers too that you really need to use in this class and going forward when you go to law school. As the book begins, first make an outline. And I can't stress this enough. I can't tell you how many times in the intro class that I could tell that a student did not make an outline. And so there's really nowhere he or she was not organized enough to really follow a flow, if you will. The paper was just scatterbrained and it didn't really follow a mold. So please make sure that you do an outline. Outlines are key. It really points you to where you want to be. It shows you what areas, you already know what areas where you're going to put content in which areas, and it really helps you just regulate the flow of your writing, whether it be a memorandum or a brief or whatever. So obviously, you're going to have an introduction. You're going to talk about judicial history. You're going to talk about things of that nature. Then you got statement of facts is where you're going to put your facts. And remember, you're just going to put your important facts. We've talked about that a good bit in these chapters. You're not going to put in there, that the car was red if it doesn't matter that the car was red, right? So just put in there facts that really mean something. So then you're going to talk about the issue. We've talked a little bit in the chapters about finding the issue and finding exactly what issue is at stake here. Then you got to make sure that you can explain what the issue is and really, legally write it where it's understandable to the reader. Then you got the rule of law. Obviously, the rule of law is important. You're going to talk about the general rule of law. So in other words, you're not going to apply your facts yet. You're going to talk about what rule of law or what cases apply to your topic. Then after that is when you do the application or analysis section, and that's where you apply your facts to the law, okay? And then the conclusion is where you're going to tie everything together and conclude everything and, make your legal conclusion, if you will. Okay, so obviously topic sentences are important. We've seen so many times in here, and it's really a good exercise where they take the first sentence of each judicial opinion, and you really can tell what's going on in the case just by the topic sentences. So it is very important to to really pay attention to your topic sentences, make them strong. And, it may be something you do after the fact. As you're writing, you may need to say, I need a topic sentence, and go back to that paragraph and add a topic sentence. That's totally fine. You may want to do that just to be able to help it flow. And in that same vein, I want you to always use headers, okay? Headers are the most important thing in legal writing. Nobody wants to read something that doesn't have headers. It just doesn't, and it's human nature to, number one, a lot of times I'll look at the headers before I even read it so I can kind of know where the case is going or know where the brief is going or know where the memo is going. And so make sure you use headers, okay? I'm not as really hung up on active voice, but you definitely should. You shouldn't have a lot of passive voice in there. So just make sure the book gives some good examples of active voice and passive voice, but make sure you understand that. You want your subjects, you want them actively doing something. So in other words, these verbs it doesn't need to be, like an example would be, the defendant or the evidence was suppressed by the court. You want to say the court suppressed the evidence. So to see how that court is actually using that verb. So the court is suppressing, not the evidence was suppressed by the court. And it's also very wordy. You can eliminate that by just cutting straight to the point and saying the court suppressed the evidence. A lot simpler, okay? Use short sentences. I'm mentioned in here about introductory phrases. I'm actually like introductory phrases as long as they're not too long because it provides a good transition. But you don't have to always use introductory phrases. If you use an introductory phrase, make sure you have a comma. Now, I know if it's 2 words, you don't have to have a comma. But if it's 3 or more words, use a comma. If you have any more questions about that, feel free to email me. But as the book talks about, avoid unnecessary words. You don't want to add in words that just don't need to be there. A lot of times I see students trying to sound like a lawyer or trying to sound like a court, and they add all this, legalese or legal talk in there, and it really jumbles it up and distracts from what you're really trying to say in the sentence. So don't try to sound like a lawyer. Just talk. Simple sentences are the best. Subject, verb, direct object, right? So it's better to keep it simple. In that same vein, keep short paragraphs. Nobody wants to read a paragraph that's half a page or even an entire page or even half a page. It needs to be 3 or 4 sentences, maybe 5. Should be fine. But just keep in mind, you don't want to read a paragraph that long. So keep in mind that your reader does not either. Anytime I see a long paragraph, it drives me crazy. I'm just like, this is too much. This is too much. And I glaze over after about 3 or 4 sentences. Okay? So make sure you pay attention to that. Legal writers don't use contractions. I don't know if we talked about this in the book, but do not use contractions. So don't say don't. Don't say can't. Just say cannot or do not. Okay? So in other words, spell out any contractions. Don't use them. This is one of my pet peeves, and if you do this in the memorandum or any assignment, I will count off points. Do not end a sentence with a preposition. Okay? Do not end a sentence with a preposition. You can look up more about this, but essentially, I don't know where it's at. That's improper speaking. Okay? It's also improper writing. Don't end a sentence with. You have to figure out, sometimes you have to say with whom. Sometimes it sounds weird. Okay? But like with whom you're speaking. Not the court was speaking with. Actually, that was a bad example. Like something like, I don't know who the court was speaking with. That would be ending a sentence with a preposition, right? In other words, you should say, I don't know with whom the court was speaking. Okay? Sounds a little different. I agree. But there are ways to do it where you don't even have to. You can completely restructure it to not even use that phrase, with whom. But anyway, point being, do not end a sentence in a preposition. You should, and we'll talk about editing in a second, but when you're editing your document, you need to be looking for that, because I'm telling you, that's a flag for me, where, and it's a flag for anybody. It's a flag for a court, a partner at a law firm. They don't want to see that. So when it comes to editing, okay, first of all, when you finish or when you think you finish, you need to print it off. Okay, you can read things way better when you print it off and read it. It helps you. There's something about a computer that you won't be reading it as well. You'll be overlooking things. You'll be overlooking certain words, and so you really need to print it off and go through each word specifically, each page specifically, and then also you can look at your writing and see if it looks nice. One of the most important things in legal writing is that it needs to look nice. It needs to look professional. When I get a brief or a memorandum and there's problems with indentions, there's extra space everywhere, obviously spelling errors, editing errors, different fonts, different italicized that are not supposed to be italicized, it does not look professional, and immediately you're going to have a negative attitude towards that legal writing. So just make sure that everything first looks nice. So when you print it off, it should look very clean. It should look like your textbook, essentially. Very clean and structured and organized. So that's one of the most important things to do. Second of all, once that looks good, I want you to read it out loud, okay? You will catch certain things. Sometimes you won't have a "the" before a word. And your brain, as you're reading it on a computer or even on a paper, if you're reading it to yourself, your brain will just eliminate that "the." It'll put that "the" in there, even though it's not there. So make sure that you're reading this out loud before you submit an important document, especially like this memorandum coming up. So you need to also have multiple reads, okay? The first time you need to be looking for concise and cohesive writing. In other words, that everything just melds together and it flows well, okay? Read it for that first. If you see a typo or something, circle it, but I want you to do that first. And then I want you to go a little more specific after that and read it again. And when you do that, you need to be reading it for typos, grammatical problems. Make sure you have full sentences. That's another thing I keep seeing. A sentence has to have a subject and a verb, and you have to. And so if it just says, like a fragment or just like a little clause in there, then I'm going to count off a good bit for that. So just please look for that as well. But anyway, so on that second look, I want you to look for these things we talked about. Long paragraphs. If it doesn't have headers, add headers. You're looking for short sentences. You're looking for active voice. You're looking for your topic sentences, etc. So just make sure on that second or third look that you're looking for different stuff. So I think that's a good summary. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thanks.